became annual accounts. Then it became quarterly accounts. Now, overnight interest rates decide the mood of a nation. You can understand how we have become short term, so short term in nature. But the life is not so short term. Even as a human being, we have a considerably long life. And certainly for a society like India, this is multi-generational, Actually, Barry Bosworth, a Brookings economist, he analyzed the savings pattern in US and in Asia, which means countries like India, where he said Americans save. When they save for themselves. It is personal savings. But in countries like India, it is dynastic savings. So in politics, we have only dynasty. See, we can't think of moving away from the fact that we have generations and generations to come. And so we cannot be packed into quarterly or overnight approach to life. Our approach is a considerably different approach as compared to the rest of the world, and particularly the Western world. And so unless we understand that, we will not be able to grasp much of what is happening today in the context of what should happen. The Indian knowledge systems is a very recent kind of phenomenon. But our knowledge system is sourced in our ancient literature, way of life, philosophy, habits, lifestyle. Much has not changed. As Swami Vivekananda said, if Vedavyasa came and took a travel across the country, he will still find some of the remnants of what he saw there today also. So there is a continuity, unbroken continuity. And I would like to take you back to much of what is being missed even in the scientific community, though it is very much related to, that's what I want to say now, that the Indian knowledge system is berated and underrated and dismissed also a while back at least. Now it is not being dismissed as badly as it was being dismissed earlier. So it's all myth. Indian knowledge system is a myth. That it's not rational, it's not scientific, it's all superstitious. Even the first Prime Minister of India used to say there is no scientific temper in this country. This is how we were all trained, accustomed to look at ourselves. Our ancient literature, whether it is Vedas or Puranas or all mythologies, we were great in many aspects. Of course, some people did conceive that we had great attainments in different areas of human endeavor. But they always said these people are a huge failure in economics. It has been a poor country, it has been a rotten country, it has been a wretched country. This is how we were pictured to ourselves. And we never even had an idea of a nation. We were never a nation. Some people used to say we were just an geographical construct. We became a nation only thanks to the British who established post office and railways. This is how we were being presented to ourselves, and we believed it, we taught, and we understood, we told the world that we were never a nation. See, this is the kind of distortion from out of which we have to gain knowledge about ourselves. So, I have to now move away from the contemporary understanding of what we are and the world is and how the world perceives us and how we should be perceiving the world. So the first thing I would like to say is whether as we have been told, as the West has told us, is all our past a mythology, myth. If this question is answered, if it is proved to be a myth, we need not have to talk about Indian knowledge systems. We have nothing to talk about. But if it is not a myth, if there is some truth in it, which is of contemporary relevance and even future relevance, then what we have understood about ourselves or made to understand or made to believe is not correct. This is where I would like to begin. For example, take the Vedas. Curious sounds, meaningless sounds, going up and down. Thousands of years people have been shouting like this. And there is no, in fact it was first reduced into writing only during Krishnadevaraya's period. For thousands of years it was heard and passed on from generation to generation, a kind of heritage which no other civilization would have managed. It's an unbelievable kind of transmission of a sound. We never understood the meaning of it, we called it meaningless, worthless, and we derided people who kept this tradition alive. It was all on the basis that there was some Saraswati river, which is mentioned in Vedas, which is mythical because it did not exist. But in 2014, the ISRO came out with a report through the remote sensing satellites that Saraswati river did exist. And because of tectonic changes, it broke into two. Half of it merged into Yamuna and half of it merged into Sutlej. And even now, subterranean Saraswati flows, and they have made hydrological findings in 3 places, in Haryana, in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, through the traces of the ISRO findings, and found Himalayan water flowing underneath. My mother used to say, Saraswati is passing subterranean way. She used to tell this to me. Today, hydrological findings and ISRO remote sensing has definitely proved that a huge Saraswati river did exist. So, when Vedic Rishis spoke of Saraswati river, they were seeing the Saraswati river, they were praising the Saraswati river. And so if Saraswati is not myth, Vedas physically were not a myth. This is the first proposition I would like to make. The second proposition is even more important. These sounds, curious sounds, meaningless sounds, this was perceived by great scientists as having the answers for the questions of modern science. This started in early 20th century, and I would like to quote some of the scientists because I would like these quotes to be in the IIT seen everywhere. It will not be seen. So, I would like to quote some of these things. Erwin Schrödinger, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, who got the Nobel Prize, he said, in all the world there is no kind of framework in which we can find consciousness in the world. I would like to go into it a little later because I want to first get into your mind that scientists have said Vedas are scientific. Otherwise I will not be open your mind to say as to what is meant by consciousness in the context of modern science. There is no kind of framework within which we can find consciousness in the world. This is simply something which we construct because of the temporal plurality of individuals. It is a false construction, which he goes on to say it's Maya. It is not some exponent of Advaitic philosophy saying, it is a Nobel laureate, Schrödinger, who goes on to say that the entire world which we see is false. it developed, I will tell you. How this thought system developed, how it evolved. But I am first giving you an opening. Otherwise, you will not believe what I am going to say. The only solution, this I will prove it later, I will take it later to this proposition. The only solution to this conflict, insofar as any available to us all, lies in the ancient wisdom of Indian Upanishads. Some blood transfusion is needed from the east to the west. If Western science is to be saved from spiritual anemia, Vedanta teaches that consciousness is singular. Mark this. This he says in 1930. Consciousness is singular. All happenings are played out in that one universal consciousness, and there is no multiplicity of ourselves. Shorty. This is one Nobel laureate. Next, Werner Heisenberg, one of the greatest physicists and co-founder of quantum physics, a Nobel Prize winner. After conversations about Indian philosophy, some of the ideas of quantum physics that had seemed crazy suddenly made much more sense. Then, Brian David Josephson, youngest Nobel laureate. The Vedanta and Sankhya hold the key to the laws of mind and thought process, which are correlated to the quantum field, that is the operation and distribution of particles at atomic and molecular levels. Tell me, how many IIT students know this? I go into the Upanishads to ask questions. Neil Bohr, Danish nuclear physicist, all the names I am mentioning are Nobel laureates. I go into Upanishads to ask questions. Neil Bohr, Danish nuclear physicist who developed Bohr model of the atom. Then Charles Thomas, American Nobel Prize winning scientist. He said Indian students should value their religious culture, and of course the classical Indian culture bats importantly on the meaning of life and values. I don't separate the two. To separate science and Indian culture would be harmful. I don't think it is practical to keep scientific and spiritual culture separate in India. Why? I will explain to you, you will be amazed. Why Charles Towns says this? You will be amazed when I am going to reveal the facts. So there are many like this. Modern physics is an exemplification and refinement of the old Hindu system. Robert Oppenheimer, the most terrifying scientific achievements of the West are the mythical experience of Bhagavad Gita. And he goes on to say, the greatest gift that the 20th century gave us was the Vedas. If scientists perceive Vedas as having hidden the secrets which the modern science is not aware, really, rishis were not fools. They were scientists. They could understand the secrets of nature. They could perceive from a terrestrial view. As you go higher and higher, you break the silos. We are all boxed in silos. Our knowledge system is limited by silos. Specialization destroys knowledge. Unless you destroy specialization, you won't get knowledge. Specialization may give you an accurate understanding about how an ant moves, but that's not going to define the world. That's not going to make you understand. For example, the other day when I was delivering a lecture in Niti Ayog on the advice of the Prime Minister, about which I will relate to you later, one of my friends told me that he had, that before that lecture, which I mentioned in that lecture also, that he had some eye problem, and when he went to the eye hospital, they said there are 8 specialists that you have to meet all the 8 people. That is how we are now dividing knowledge. Knowledge is not divisible. We are dividing knowledge. Modern education system divides knowledge. It's a disaster, which I am going to relate to you later, and I can read 20 more, but I don't want to. It is only to make it clear that Vedas contain scientific facts which you and me do not know because we had 1,000-year suspension in our civilization. Third, first, Vedas are a fact because Saraswati is a fact. Vedas are scientific because scientists say so. And Vedas are historic, in which I am personally I was associated with IIT Bombay. I don't know how many of you have heard the name. He is probably the greatest epigraphist and historian. Linguistic historians India produced. He is an IAS officer. I was very closely working with him. We never agreed on anything, but we continued to pursue the epigraphic and archaeological findings. And when we were sitting in everybody thought that Indus Valley civilization was pre-Aryan, pre-Vedic, and Dravidian. And Aryan-Dravidian theory was formulated on that basis. I don't know how many of you are aware that when the colonizers came here and found Sanskrit, they said, these are our people. And then they said, the Aryans came and civilized India. But when the Indus Valley was found, they said the Aryans came and destroyed India. In just 30 years. You know, we all believed it. We are teaching it. We are producing doctorates. We are making policies. We are doing politics. So, when I was discussing with Ayurveda Mahadevan in 1978, he told me, Guru, there's something stunning happening. Because he is a man who knew Sanskrit, who knew Vedas, and he said that I am seeing 2,500 Indus Valley seals. And I am comparing it with the Somapana Yajna chapter of the Rig Veda and find both are aligning. It was completely against his 30-year research earlier. And he had the intellectual honesty to submit a paper in 1983 in Tokyo saying that I am confused, I am no more able to say that Indus Valley is pre-Vedic and there is a convergence. And it is now virtually accepted that there is a convergence of Indus Valley civilization and Rig Veda. None of it has come into the mainline academics of India. So 3 points are certain. One, Vedas were a fact. No myth. That Vedas contain scientific truth. Scientists say so, not ordinary scientists. 7 Nobel laureates have said that. And now how, after, in the second half of the 20th century, the idea of consciousness was given up by the scientists. They again went back to the mechanical mode of Newton and combining Newton with Einstein. And now how the whole thing is returning back and in a massive way. And that has been given Nobel Prize in 2020. Unless I say this, how what Schrödinger said is now being recalled. And the idea of consciousness, which is the very basic of our Vedic view of what the universe is, where it originated, that is again coming back. It is not that this Nobel laureate said this in 1930, 40, 50, 60, 70. It has come back again. So, historically also, the Vedic civilization and Indus Valley civilization are convergent. Today the position is, Vedas contain the answers for the modern scientific questions. This is what I read out Schrödinger to you. He said, the only solution to the conflict, whether the consciousness is singular or plural, insofar as any is available to us all, lies in the ancient wisdom of Upanishads. So, if Vedas are answers to modern science, fundamental problem arose, I think. Newtonian model said the world, the entire universe is divisible into 72 elements. That's all. You can see all of them. But when Einstein went deeper and found that's all atomic, you can't see it. To see it, it requires enormous amount of effort. It goes beyond sensory perception. Then the entire mechanical theory collapsed and the quantum theory came. But in the quantum theory also, they could not explain what moves the neutron. So it stopped. Then only Schrödinger said, it's all ultimately one consciousness. Then came the Big Bang theory. Big Bang theory was something which Einstein was not supposed to have proved. Einstein believed in evolution. So when Stephen Hawking came out with his Big Bang theory, he said 1/1,000,000th of an atom developed such heat, it exploded. You don't ask me where that 1/1,000,000th of atom came. So it came, you have to believe it came, and he proved it came. But what existed before that has been haunting the entire scientific community since the advent of the Big Bang theory. No one knows what existed before. Now two theories have come. One, that the pre-existing situation before Big Bang which produced matter, which is transformed into this IIT, your body, my body, the bridges, world. Everything originated in the smallest of small atom. But before that, what? That's where the theory of consciousness has come. And two persons worked on it. One, Egil Wigner. He got Nobel Prize in 1963. And he began working on it after he got the Nobel Prize. And I can keep on quoting, but I don't want to waste your time. He said it is all originating in consciousness. Consciousness is not material. From which material came? From which matter came? From which atom came? From which the entire creation came? Now you see in NASA. We are talking about our galaxy. They are saying trillions of galaxies are there. Billions of suns are there. Can you imagine the creative process? This entire creative process, now it is being said, Big Bang is not the starting point, Big Bang is the repeated occurrence. This happens, afterwards something happens, and then another Big Bang. Big Bang is not the starter. It is a cycle. So the latest advancement of Schrödinger's theory is Roger Penrose, who got the Nobel Prize in 2020 in physics, who said there is a pre-existing consciousness which produced the Big Bang. So consciousness can produce Big Bang means, what is the consciousness? There is only one consciousness. There is no second. That consciousness doesn't have a personality. It's the whole. It's indivisible. It's all pervasive. The Scientific American magazine, as late as June 2023, said, a singular universal consciousness is a fundamental reality. That is the only reality that produced all this. And now I will go, this is the level to which science can go. You know, there is for Taittiriya Upanishad. I wish all of you can go and read the 4-5 stanzas. It is a conversation between Bhrigu, who is the son of Varuna, and Varuna. He says, talking about Brahman. Please tell me what is Brahman. He's a young boy. It is not so easy. You begin. Then you go and observe the world. You go and introspect. You do scientific investigation. You pursue the path of Vijnana. That will lead you to Brahman. So then Annam Brahmeti Vedanta is not what we eat. The entire universe is Anna for Anna within itself, because it eats itself, it feeds itself. Then Prana, that is the air. Then Mana, that's the thought. Then Vijnana. Then he comes and says, of all these three stages he passes. He says Anna is Brahman. He said, go and do research. Then Prana is Brahman. Come on, second year also you have passed. You go and do research. Third, he said Mana. See, unless the thought is there, how do you understand all this? He said, third year also you have passed. You go and do further research. He says, this entire understanding comes from the discretionary power that science provides. Vijnanam Brahme Divyajana, Vijnana Eva Kalpimani Bhuta Najanti, Vijnane Najata Najivanti, Vijnanam Prayam Kavisam Visantiti, Tat Vijnaya. Through Vijnana, you can reach a stage where you can perceive the truth, the ultimate truth. This is Taittiriya Upanishad. Then he comes and says, even after that, Anando Brahmeti, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of the highest satisfaction that one has, that leads you to Brahman. Then he says, I need not teach you hereafter, you will realize it yourself. Brahman is something, the ultimate truth is something, the ultimate consciousness is something which you can only realize. Science ends with the stage where you have to realize that superior consciousness, for which there is no material in the world except the Indian knowledge system. I would request you to read two books, both written by Greek authors. One is called India in Greece. This was written in 1823, 1832, if I remember right, by Edward Pocock. He said we got the Greek civilization got its entire material, thought, books, literature, mythology, only from India. Because the rivers that have been named there, the mountains that have been named there, are all varying, because we name the mountains after women. We name the rivers after women. The same thing prevails there. And he had said how the 2500 years before BCE, how the migration took place and all that, but it was more based on a linguistic interpretation. Then came a very original work by another Greek author. It is called The Shape of Ancient Thought. You must read that book up, because 1/3 of that book is only bibliography. And he said the pre-Hellenic, the entire thoughts of Plato and Socrates, he says the laboratory was only in India. Because the idea of Brahman, the idea of self, idea of universal consciousness they speak of has no basic literature. It's an important phenomenon. So he said all the knowledge that was generated in India, the pre-Hellenistic Greece imported. The post-Hellenistic Greece exported to India. That was his theory. This book was published in 2001. I'm talking about 1832 by a Greek. Another, this Shape of Ancient Thought by Thomas Machiavelli, who was also a Greek. So, India was the source of what is called real knowledge. Fake knowledge can be generated anywhere. All the economic theories that have been trotted out in the last 30 years have been fake, has been admitted by economists themselves. In fact, when I took the IIT class, I showed pages after pages to them. They are hitting each other. You are a fool. You are an idiot. This is how economists were. You misled. You misled. Everybody misled. That's the point. So these are not true. The transient, overnight interest rate is not true. Quarterly balance sheet is not true. So we are concerned with higher truth, about which I am going to tell you how this whole thing isn't just something which we perceived and began to expound, began to debate, began to have discourse, or has it true anything with the way we live? That is the most important question. Is all this having any impact on our lives? The way we are structured? This is the most important thing. So, last October, about June, I had a discussion with the Prime Minister on his G20 motto: one Earth, one family, one future. I told him, what you say maybe can be understood by some scholarly Indians, but not by ordinary Indians also. Because we have moved far away from this position. We are on overnight interest rates today. So we cannot understand from a terrestrial perspective what the world is, what environment is, what lifestyle is. So we have got to make it more concrete. He asked me how. Then I explained. Then he asked me to give whatever I was speaking, those points, as a lecture in Niti Ayog, which I delivered in October last. I am giving you the substance of it, but the lecture you must listen. I will give it to, send the link to Mr. Bucket. It's very simple. We have just 2.4% of the global land area. We have 18% of human population. We have 30% of world's bovine population. We have 40% of world's cattle population. We have 8% of world's bioresources. How is it that on a small piece of land, you can maintain this a huge ecological circus? And we went further into it. In 1960s and 70s, when we did not have food to eat, the cattle population kept rising. We didn't eat them. How is it that we maintain this? I am giving you the proof. We have half of our land, 1% of, that is, about 45% of Indian landscape is farmland. This is the greatest gift that God has given to us. That is, out of the entire global surface area, 10.2% is farmland, the whole world. Out of which we have 1/10 in India. And out of this 10.2% farmland, almost 8% is used for meat farming. Only 2.3% or 2.4% is used for crop farming. We use our entire agricultural land for crop farming. That is where the success of the Indian civilization is. I want you to look at a website, ourworldindata.com, because that is one of the most trusted websites of the world. Ourworldindata.com, from which I am giving you the figures. Ourworldindata.com. 83% of the calorie values only farming gives. Only 17% of the calorie value comes from meat. 63% of the protein value comes from crop. 37% comes from meat. The CO2 gas emission in meat is 10 to 100 times more than crop farming. We in India also eat meat. Nearly 60% of our population eat meat. But we don't eat meat as main food. Cereals are our main food. That's a sabji. So our average meat consumption is 3.1 kg per head per annum. In 2001 it was almost 5. It's actually coming down. And in America it is 128 kg per head per annum. In Europe it's more than 110. In South Africa it is 220. You know the meaning of this? If Indian food habits shift to the American food habits, we will need 6 times the agricultural land we have. And we will choke the world with CO2 gas emission, CO2. Do you mean to say this kind of food habit, this understanding, this coexistence with animals, is all an accident? Isavasya nidam sarvam etkinjat jagatyam jagati tena vidyena buddhidaha ma vada kasya suddham. This is the overarching principle of both environment and economy. The entire universe is the manifestation of the divine. Mahatma Gandhi says, if the Hindus lose the entire literature of theirs and only this one Upanishad is with them, they will be able to survive. That is the significant Mahatma Gandhi attaches to this Isavasya Upanishad. The entire world is a manifestation of God. The next sentence is important. Yatkinjat jagatyam jagati. Please consume only what is your share. Don't take other share. This is simple. Others means not other human beings. It is a cat. It is a boy. It is nature. That's why we worship nature, we worship cattle, we worship snake. We worship everything. This has come down. This has been explained through Puranas. In fact, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Mahabharata, I have mentioned it in my lectures. In Virata Parva, there is a sloka. It says that tigers cannot live without forests. And forest can be protected only by tigers. So tiger is important for protecting forest and forest is important for housing the tigers. Thousands of years back, in 1900, we had 40,000 tigers and 40% forest coverage in India. In 2018, our tiger population came down to 1800. Our forest coverage came down to 19%. Tiger is really a representative of wildlife. Without wildlife, there can't be forest. Forest cannot be protected by government, by forest rangers. There needs to be a philosophy. There has to be an eco-balancing. These were all part of the Indian understanding, our ancient understanding of nature, of humans. What they should eat, what they should not. Here, non-vegetarians also, they don't eat on Amavasya, they don't eat on Dwadasi, they don't eat on whatever, Ekadasi. This is a restraint we put on ourselves. This is called aparigraha. We restrain ourselves. This has been thousands of years occurring. People have been evangelized into it. And it's a philosophy. Philosophy sets the goal of life. The goal of life sets the lifestyle. The lifestyle sets the habits. Habits set what wants you have. And that settles what you produce or don't produce. If you disturb the philosophy, everything gets disturbed. So this overarching philosophy, which is abstract, that has been retailed into practice by a huge mechanism of Puranas, of traditions, of values, culture, gurus. It has not happened just like that. Everybody is not going to understand what is supreme consciousness and Brahman. But those who understood were able to transmit it so that on 2.4% of the global land area, 18% of the people, 30% of growing population, 40% of cattle population. You know, the cattle population in America is 1/5 in India, whereas America has 3.5 times the size of India. China has 3.5 times the size of India, but its growing population is just 1/6 of India's. So when you talk of environment, if all Indians decide to follow American sinful style, now your human rights said you can eat anything that you want, you begin to eat. There will be no India, there will be no world. Almost half a dozen very famous ecologists have said that it is India which is saving the world by not emitting greenhouse gases which are unabsorbable for 2000 years. Do we understand? What is Indian knowledge system? Indian knowledge system connects the day-to-day life with the ultimate reality, ultimate consciousness, and that is brought into practice by a whole series of interventions, right up to the family. You know, in my house, when we were trying to build a house, we were a joint family that 25 persons were residing. So we bought a small plot of land in which we found almost at 60% of the plot area, there was a neem tree. We sat as a family and discussed. Cutting that neem tree, we could never have built the house, lived in peace. You come to my house, we have built the house around the neem tree. That's for us a God. Do you mean to say this could come without seeing divinity everywhere? This is the Indian knowledge system's origin, source, fundamental, which the Nobel Prize in 2020 says universal consciousness is fundamental. Of course, for them it is only theory. For us it is in practice. The most important gift that India could give to the world, that it is not theory, it is not books, it is not text, it is not Puranas, it is not Vedas. It's actually living. Now, if Vedas are there, when I was talking to a group of anthropologists. You know, anthropology, I don't know if any of you can follow what I am saying. Anthropology is the study of human society. The general principle of anthropology expounded by the West is forest is backward and plains are civilized. This is the basic formula. The people who live in forests are savages, they are barbaric, they are semi-barbaric, and now they have coined a more decent term. They are tribals. See, this is the Western anthropology, study of the other people. We were all regarded like that. Of course, if we speak English, we get promoted. But our Vedas are called aranyakas. They emanated from forest. And they were used in plains. The knowledge generated in forest was used in plains. This is Indira Gandhi, some of the government institutions sometimes tell the truth also. IGNCA has brought out all this, how the Indian knowledge emanated from forest. Our Bhagavata Purana says that when Kali Yuga was coming, the rishis thought, this is going to be a huge paradigm shift, how to guide the people. They didn't come to Taj in Bombay. They went to Naimisharanya forest. They sat and discussed. And then they said only Bhakti movement will work. All this jnana and all that is not going to work. All these great complicated Maya, this theory, all this is not going to work. It is only simple what the people can understand. I was addressing a meeting in Guwahati when an anthropology professor, I was saying that the whole Indian system, of course, I have not said it as much as I tried to explain it to you. In a way, that we have a model of life which coexists with the entire creation, with animals, with water, anything. So we have been able to identify with nature. We became part of nature. We were not the master of nature. So our ecology is man as part of nature, not man as the master. So when I was explaining all this, then I said we have rules of life, do's and don'ts. Then he said, his name was Dr. Bhagavati, he was the Vice Chancellor, retired Vice Chancellor of Guwahati University. He was an anthropology professor. He asked me, Gurumurthy, all this he says to all your do's and don'ts and your rules of life are applicable only in the plains. They are not applicable in forests. I said in forests, the rules of life are not laid down by humans. It is laid down by nature. Only when human beings live together, then you need do's and don'ts, what you should do, what you should not do. There the nature decides. You can't go beyond a particular time in that particular area because there will be snakes. You can't go here because of this. There will be. The person who is living there, he cannot lay down rules for himself. He is part of a larger idea of life. I don't know whether when I was in SSLC, I read a beautiful essay by D.H. Lawrence. It is called Rule of the Jungle. I remember right, that is the title of it. So he says a deer goes to take water. It looks this way and that way. It goes near the pond. It comes back. Fear. Then comes the leopard. D.H. Lawrence asks, whom has he to fear? Yet there is fear in his eyes as he moves stealthily towards the pond. The rule of jungle is fear. But in this world, we need fear as well as freedom. That is why we devised all these rules of life. You need to have fear, and at the same time, you need to have freedom. When I said this, he said, Mr. Gurumurthy, this is the first time I am having real. I said, even I did not remember till I spoke to you that this is my answer. So when I spoke to these anthropologists, that the Western view that forest is backward, forest is barbaric, or forest is savagery, is completely wrong. It is there you find great rishis reaching the highest level of enlightenment because they were in tune with nature. You have to be in tune with nature to understand the universal truth. That's why our people went to forest. Bharat, after whom this nation is named, his father handed over the kingdom to him and went to Vanaprastha to understand truth. Is this the way we understand the Indian knowledge? So we had, and all this is true. I have explained in the course of my entire teaching in IIT that for 1800 years India was the leading economic engine of the world. And when I spoke in the IIT students were not aware. And this research was 1983 and 2001. I was talking in 2010. IIT was not aware. This is global research. But by Paul Bairoch and Angus Madison, which is now accepted as the standard research. How is it that India built that prosperity? And 1934 Bank of International Settlement report. Bank of International Settlement is one of the most modern organizations. In 1934 they brought out a report that for 4 centuries India accumulated 15% of world's gold reserves. That was the extent of export surplus of India. But that is not the India that you know. That is not the India that is taught to you. That is not the India that is presented to you. That is not the India you present to the world. So Indian knowledge system was not an economic failure. It was an economic success because we used the resources most positively. Whether it is human, animal, nature, tree, water, everything is based on conservation. In our village, we used to see water flowing like this. My mother used to say, don't waste water. I used to think, oh, so much water is there, why my mother is saying, don't waste water? That was the rule of nature. We have lost it. We have destroyed that culture. So we are not in tune with nature. We are not tuned with the Vedic way of life. This material, but the source is non-material. So we are a very peaceful and non-violent society. Why? If you can't harm animals, you can't harm human beings. I will give you the best research on this subject by Professor R.J. Raman of Hawaii University, who has built a huge website, 30 years research, and that website is called Power Kills. You must go to that website. Power Kills is the website. 30 years he built the website and found, till the 13th century, he found that for 2,500 years, there were 1.2 billion people killed by humans' action against humans. 1.2 billion people. He said till the 13th century there was no killing in India. Except Ashoka's Kalinga war in which 100,000 people died. Will you believe why India should have been an island when blood was flowing elsewhere, everywhere? There is a philosophy of life. He said don't harm anything, don't harm the animals, don't harm this. It's not something which remained at the level of the highest and the most enlightened people. It was brought to the level of an ordinary man's behavior. The output is, in macroeconomics, you always say the price is low, if the GDP is more, if the employment is high, everything is alright. Nobody goes into how it happened. Like that, if there is no violence, if you live in tune with nature, if you are having a kind of an attitude that the whole world is one, the universe is one, this is the output, means there must be a source of thought. This is the origin of the Indian knowledge system, and I am very happy. It's a very vast and deep topic, and I am happy that you gave me the time to explain and also listen. Thank you.